everybody. Hi Dee. Hi Kara.
Hi Dee. Hi Kara. Hi Jennifer.
We're gonna hang out for a few minutes, let some more people join. But we will start a poll that you can take to share some of your thoughts. If you haven't had a chance to submit questions, this is a good opportunity also to kind of tailor the content today to what would be most helpful to you. So you should see that. And people can feel free to come off mute and say hello. You're muted automatically when you come in, but you can definitely join the conversation whenever you would like to. All right. I'm not seeing anybody else in the waiting room just yet, but we can give it a few more minutes.
Well, if it's just the five, the six, seven of us, then we'll have a great conversation.
All right, welcome. Welcome, Anna. We are just waiting a few minutes to give folks a chance to join. There's a poll up that you can take to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with AI right now. And we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Here people are coming in.
Mhm. I feel like in Zoom world, you have to give like a 5 minute grace period.
Yeah, because nobody expects to have to finish on time anymore.
I mean, I think the worst thing about Zoom is like back-to-back meetings are like totally normal now because it used to be like, I'm gonna have to walk to a new conference room. I can't take another meeting right now. But now we all can and have to.
But for us anyway, we don't have to commute in the morning. Like
That's
that to
true.
me
That's
is
true. That's true.
for me, that's a fine trade-off personally. I don't know that that's the same for everyone, but
I mean, I will say our East Coast friends are potentially giving up their lunch hour to be here with us or having lunch with us, which I appreciate.
please do
Yeah.
if you
Take
would
care of
like to.
yourselves. Philip, I looked it up. We're in the same time zone.
Mountain.
Hmm.
We switch when daylight savings time hits. We're central and then now we're mountain because we don't
Oh,
move here. Yeah.
I envy that.
Oh,
It's my least
Nadia.
favorite time of the year. Also, I have some family in Arizona and it gets very confusing because they don't switch either. So I have to honestly, I just Google it every time I call them. I'm like, what time is it? I don't know.
The wildest thing was I did a session for a group in India and they have a 30-minute time zone, like a
Oh
half
my.
zone.
Hmm.
So I was like,
Oof.
And a lot of parts are
I
almost like exactly 12 hours different. So you have to really juggle schedules to like find, I used to have friends there. They were always like texting me at 2 in the morning. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then I was like, oh, it's the afternoon for you. Hello, folks that just joined. Hello, Nadia. We've got a poll going if you want to chime in and share some thoughts about how you're using AI, what you're thinking about AI. Um, and I think if we don't see anybody in the waiting room, we can probably get started and folks can come in as they're available. But I also want to make sure we have plenty of time for this conversation. Um, so I think I'll leave the poll up for a minute so people can keep doing that as we're doing intros, and then as we dive into questions, we can show that so we can kind of get a glimpse of where everybody is at. Um, Hello everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad everybody is here today for this group therapy for nonprofit fundraisers talk hosted by SparkPoint Fundraising. My name's Hannah Payton. I'm the client services manager here at SparkPoint. I'll be the moderator today. I'll be tech support. I will be looking for your questions in the Q&A. If you have not been to one of our fundraising talks before, we created the space because we know that nonprofit leaders and fundraisers are dealing with a lot right now and always still being expected to deliver major results. So we just wanted to have a space where we can come together, connect, commiserate, and strategize. Today, we have two amazing guest speakers. We're joined by Whitney Brimfield, who is the founder of SparkPoint. She brings more than 20 years of experience in fundraising, business development, and social enterprise across public health, education, the arts, and beyond. I need to go to my next slide so you can see who these people are. Philip Ding is the co-founder and CEO of Grantable, which many of you are probably very familiar with. It's an AI-powered proposal writing assistant. Philip brings 15 years of nonprofit sector experience as a founder, executive director, and grant consultant. Philip, is there anything else you would like to add to your intro?
No, that's great. I'll just highlight that most of my career is in the nonprofit sector. So if people really want to get into the weeds there, I'm one of the sought after people to translate between the world of nonprofits and AI. So
Fantastic. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. Um, so some of the topics that we are going to be covering um, are going to include how, when, and why to use AI, how to get your team on the same page about AI, balancing quality and efficiency, and maintaining your credibility with funders. You're welcome to drop any questions that you haven't had a chance to share in the Q&A, and we will jump into those. Um, a few housekeeping notes. Everybody came in muted, but we want this to be a conversation, so please feel free to come off mute and ask a question if you'd like to. We will be, if you would like to submit a question during the session, use the Q&A. I will be keeping my eye on that. And if you have to leave or you get interrupted, you can come back with the same link, but also our session's being recorded and we'll send that out afterwards so you won't miss anything. With that, I can hand it off to Whitney to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Excuse me. I haven't been talking that much this morning. Thank you so much for being here. When we were talking about what to call this session, I threw out, is everyone using AI but me, kind of flippantly, because it feels like that's what we keep hearing from fundraisers right now. It's like, I know I'm supposed to be using it, but I don't know what to do. And of course, there's a lot of noise, a lot of pressure to figure it out, and not a lot of clear practical guidance on what's actually useful, especially when you're already stretched thin, don't really have time to figure out where to look. So today is really about creating a space to talk about it all honestly, what's working, what's confusing, and how AI is actually showing up in grant writing and fundraising and in a way that saves time without sacrificing quality or trust. But so we'll share a few examples along the way. We certainly have a lot of questions ourselves, but this is really for you to, so bring your questions and let's shape the conversation together. Because I think this really is about creating a space to talk, not about creating a space to listen to us answer questions, although we're here to do that. So Hannah's going to moderate for us and kind of get the conversation moving. So I'll kick it back to her for a sec. Unless
I
folks do
foolishly
have
put
anything
myself on mute, but I'm back.
to
Um, all right, so looking at the poll results that came in, it looks like folks are kind of dabbling in a little bit of this and that. It looks like about half of people are using AI occasionally and half have really integrated it. So I think this is going to be a great conversation. Um, so to kick us off, one of the questions that we got in a few different forms was how to kind of get started with AI for fundraising. So we heard in many cases, development staff are eager to try AI, but maybe the ED or the board is skeptical, or vice versa. The executive director is really excited about it and the team is not. So how would you coach organizations through that initial conversation? And I think either Whitney or Philip can start. I'd love to hear both your thoughts.
I definitely have thoughts, but I'd also love to hear from everyone on the call, anyone who has experience with this kind of conversation. If you have some like practical knowledge that you have about it, I'd love to hear that too. But I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer. It looks like not. So, okay. I mean, I think that with any change, especially changes in technology, um, everybody has to understand the purpose and the guardrails around whatever tool it is you're talking about. And I think that referring to AI as a tool is a helpful thing for me to think about in terms of how it gets most effectively used at work. Um, that it's not a solution, it's a tool. So you have to figure out why you're using it, and it has to have a practical application to your desired outcome, right? Because if you're using, the analogy applies that if all you have is a hammer, then everything is a nail. The same is true here, right? You have to have a focused purpose and reason why you're using it, and then you have to have guardrails around it. So, formal policies around AI use and how it's used in your organization that reflect your values and your mission, I think are important conversations to have. But Philip, I'd love to hear about it from your perspective of more like the kind of tech adoption side of things and like how do you get people more comfortable with it?
Yeah, so I thought about this question, and from my experience, I've spoken to probably, I don't know, dozens, maybe more than 100 different audiences now, and this question comes up a lot. And what I have come to as a hypothesis here, a methodology, is to actually investigate the skepticism or the discomfort. Like, what is the source of that from the
Mm,
ED, from the board? So one example is I get the energy use question all the time. I've heard AI uses so much energy, so I'm uncomfortable using it, or how do we feel about using it? If you ask one more question, if you say, well, how much energy does AI use? Very few people know the answer to that. So what I'm highlighting is people have a concern and then they have not enough information to actually figure out what to do with that concern. So what I think is a first step is to figure out, why is leadership skeptical? What are their specific concerns? And then how do you actually go about figuring out the information gathering, doing the research to answer the questions? So I think you figure out what are the concerns, then you figure out what do we need to learn in order to like enlighten ourselves and then have a conversation about the particular concerns. Because if you, to go back to the energy use question, if everybody's concerned about AI and energy use, but we're still flying on airplanes, I mean, the mismatch in terms of carbon footprint, driving cars, like AI uses a lot of energy compared to traditional software because of the way that it works, but not a lot of energy compared to hydrocarbons and using all kinds of energy infrastructure that we all, or most people, take part in quite regularly. And then, to even parse it more, like there's an AI transcription, I think, happening right now on this call. So are we not using AI or are we using AI? It's the same large language model that is transcribing this call. And so one of the things that I just want to call out is, if you don't investigate this question thoroughly enough, what ends up happening is the people who are working on these incredible missions at these mission driven organizations decide, we're not going to use AI because of our values, because of what we're doing. And then everywhere else in their lives, they're using AI. So they're supporting the companies financially and otherwise with AI because they're using Amazon, they're using Instagram, they're using Zoom transcripts, they're using all this stuff. And then the one place where they spend 8 hours a day trying to work on mission impactful work, they're saying, here, we're not going to use the tool of artificial intelligence. So they haven't applied the framework enough, or they haven't investigated the questions enough. And that's what I'm scared of for the sector, is to say, okay, for everything else, or for the work where we're trying to make the world a better place, we're not going to use AI on principle. But then we haven't investigated the principle enough to figure out, how can we actually educate ourselves and know how to make decisions. Like there might be things you want to remove from the workflow, but elsewhere in your life as well. So that's kind of how I get at this. It's kind of moving into the skepticism, moving into the concerns, and working as a team to uncover the information you need to create your strategy.
Wonderful.
I would
Um,
just I would just add on the environmental impact piece. I was just talking with a group of other nonprofit care farms, who, of course, environment is a big part of all of our missions. And I sort of equated it to like, as a kid of the 90s, we were all told, like, if we just pick up trash, right? Like, if we just, I was on the litter crew, right? Like, if we just do our part, we're going to stop climate change. We're going to stop the degradation of our environment. And the truth is, it's these really large corporations that are causing the bulk of the harm. And yes, we should all do our part. And so for me, that's evaluating, like, I don't use AI. I made the decision. I don't use AI to write internal emails because I want that to come from me, right? Like
Mhm.
that's an important thing. I want my voice to be part of it. But when I'm writing my 15th LOI of the week, I am going to use it because I couldn't get to 15 if I wasn't using AI, and to
Mhm.
evaluate where there are places to use it and places not, but to remind ourselves that, like, I think, Philip, you were saying this, but like if we're not using it as the do-gooders and the change makers, we're just going to be behind.
Yeah, nobody in the private sector is having the moral qualms about using AI. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, the sector that is most concerned with ethical use is like not part of the
Right.
conversation.
Yeah, I
So
just
I'm
came
like,
from a
oh my
health
God.
tech startup and they were like replacing the whole service team with AI, using all of their knowledge, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
replace with a chatbot. I was like, okay, we're okay. Like we are doing okay over here.
yeah, exactly.
Not to put you on the spot, but Kara, do you want to say what organization you come from? Because I think it adds a little context to your answer also,
Sure. Yeah, I met Red Wiggler Care Farm and the Care Farming Network.
which is a very cool organization that everybody should look up. Um, Another question that we got about sort of how to roll this out with your team, um, is is there any are there parts of the fundraising workflow where AI is not a good fit? Kind of to Kara's point about what you're using it for and what you're not using it for. And are there places where you would always keep a human in the loop? And Philip, I would love to put you on the spot for this question. I'm super interested in your answer.
Yeah.
Which one? The how to roll it out, or the where is it not a
The
good fit?
where like where is it not a good fit? Where would you keep a human in the workflow?
I think about it not by particular scenario, although, the obvious choice would be like when there's important human to human interaction. Mine is more of an orientation framework where if you're in a situation where it requires that nuance and that relationship, uh, AI behind you supporting you is good. AI between you is really sketchy. So if it's being the intermediary, be really careful. I think Kara said something very similar, like internal emails. If she's using that to generate the email, that's between. That's like it's passing through like a filter. But if it's helping support, like helping you prep, bring me the facts, help me kind of get everybody's perspectives together so that I can address everybody in the team, or you name your scenario, but then you're the one interacting, then I think it's actually it can be really additive. But just that orientation, is it a filter? Is it passing through and it's the final delivery, or is it you? That's how I think about that one.
That makes sense. Winnie, I know at SparkPoint we are always emphasizing to people like the human relationship part of grant writing and how important that is. Do you have anything else to add from that lens?
No, I'm happy that Philip and I are on the same page about that. But my answer to that question is always if it's about like a relationship, which every communication with a donor and a funder is, right? But not every communication with a donor and a funder requires a like human delivery system, right? So we send emails all the time. But when you're, anything that's about meeting with somebody, reporting on your success in a way that is engaging and starts a conversation, like you need to be having one-on-one conversations with your biggest supporters. And that cannot be done with AI. But I agree with Philip that like if you need a script for it, certainly AI is a good place to go just to kind of get you at least a starting point for a script for that conversation. Which, and I think having the making that easier, like making the scripting of those conversations easier, is only going to advance the efficiency of fundraisers. But I mean, I think we've all sat down in front of a blank page to write a script for a donor call, and it can be difficult. It can be intimidating, and I think that part is fantastic. But it cannot be the end point, like Philip is saying. You have, in my mind anyway, you still have to have a human both review and refine that script and then deliver it. Like it's not something that can be automated. So I would say just relationships cannot be automated, at least not completely. I'm sure some people would argue the opposite. But I would say in the fundraising world, you have to center the relationship. And I think that aligns with human-centered AI.
Absolutely. Um, Dee, I really like your comment that you shared. Do you want to add anything to that?
Actually, yeah, I think that one of the things, and maybe we'll get to this topic, is the potential for de-skilling and brain rot. And so,
Mhm.
one of the things to keep it not only human-centered, but also to avoid just letting it do everything for you, because it's really easy to fall into that trap, right? It sometimes comes up with great answers, it sometimes comes up with fake answers, but it's so fast and it seems to know what's going on, right? So an example is I said that, you need to not let it take the place of discernment and judgment. So an example is you might ask AI, what questions is a funder likely to ask me in a meeting, right? Not what are the answers, but what are they likely to ask me? And then you stop and you say, what do I think the answers to that are? You might even write them down. And then if you want to ask it, what are the good answers? And you look at it, you're able to maintain discernment. But if you just go, what are funders going to expect and how should I respond to that? Then you're not inserting the element of discernment and judgment about that. So a little pre-work and intermittent work while you're using AI can help you to sharpen your skills and use it to augment your work instead of take the place of you and your discernment and judgment.
Yeah,
I
I like
really
that.
like
I think that's
that.
that on.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I'm going to jump to a big question. I think this is something that is on, it's something we're all thinking. Um, do funders know when a grant is written with AI and does it reflect badly on my organization?
Yes and yes. I've heard this from funders.
All right, tell us more about that.
Um, I think there's some pretty common patterns. If you have used AI and you haven't read it before you've given it to the funder, especially, although everything we're saying here, obviously, I don't think that's what most people are doing. But there's some kind of um, word choices, punctuation choices, and kind of tones and patterns of writing that sometimes show up regularly in AI written things. And funders obviously know about those things. And any of us who has read a pool of resumes in the past 2 years has also experienced this, right? Because LinkedIn has this really awesome thing where they'll make a resume and a cover letter for you, but they are all the same. They are all using the exact same words, or at least it was like about a year ago, 2 years ago. It's probably more advanced now than it was then, but still, you can tell. So I think the same thing is true for funders, that they can tell the applications that have been written with AI that haven't had any kind of scrutiny or haven't had enough of an expert review before being submitted. It's pretty obvious. And I don't think they like it. Whether or not they're like actually penalizing people for that, I can't say because I don't know the answer to that. But I don't think any of us like it, right? If you've spent any time reading like a high volume of anything submitted like this, you would feel the same way. And even when you're not using AI, like if you're reading the same thing over and over again, a lot of it is going to sound the same. So I think for that, to compound that is probably just very annoying for them.
So it's not necessarily the AI itself, it's kind of the quality and the volume,
Right,
I think. I mean, I've heard from
right.
many funders that I think this is partly due to need, but I think it's also due to AI making it a little easier to get like, one more grant out the door, that the
Hmm.
volume of applications is just increasing.
Plus
Philip,
the
do you
need
have
is
anything to
increasing at
add?
the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I have I think I'm going to get on my soapbox this year for this because I think I see a traffic jam forming between the two sides. So it is true that if you don't really give the AI much instruction, it will sound kind of AI-ish, but there was just a test that the New York Times ran where they had five different literary excerpts, and that one was from an award-winning book by an award-winning internationally famous author, and another was an AI generated thing. And 54% of people over almost 100,000 samples chose the AI writing as what they preferred. So there's a slight edge already in the quality of AI writing. And this is not like anodyne generic stuff. This is like emotional, evocative writing that was created by a machine. So I don't think it is an issue of the quality of the language models anymore. They are, in effect, better writers than most human beings, even the best human writers. So it is a misuse if the writing sounds really bad and that the funder is able to tell. Second point is detectors do not work. So the OpenAI was trying to create its own detector and they just trashed the whole project because it's not reliable. Stanford can't figure it out. So we are past the age where AI can detect itself. So the writing is really in that realm. The funders have a legitimate gripe here because people are definitely better able to prospect and better able to crank out applications. And so they are probably getting a bunch of junk because there are companies in our space next to Grantable that really are taking an unethical approach here. And they're saying, give us your website. We'll find everything out there for you, and we'll just scrape your website and write a proposal for you and spray it out to every single funder. And I'm really against that. At the same time, the funders that are putting questions in now that say, did you use AI to write this? Let's look at what they're doing. They cannot detect whether or not AI was used. So they're potentially penalizing honesty. So if somebody says, yes, I used AI here, and they're incentivizing dishonesty. If people say, oh, no, no, this is just us. So I'm trying to start to get GPA and other sort of associations that are conversation conveners and to get the funder side to say, hey, look, there's a very legitimate reason why people want to use AI to reduce the burden of your applications, which have been historically really onerous. So we definitely want to make it more efficient. At the same time, we get it. You don't want to get a wave of really bad applications in the door. So I think we actually have to create some norms here that de-emphasize the importance of how personalized was this grant application to me? Is the information well conveyed? Is it accurate? Is it concise? Does it meet all the obligations or the requirements of the proposal? And is it well aligned and directed? So, what I would like to try to shift the whole sector towards is for funders and applicants, probably with fundraising specialists as the intermediaries, to create better trust signals that, hey, we've done the research about you as a funder. Human beings have evaluated this. We have spoken and we are applying to you because we have made a decision as a team that this is a really important opportunity that we want to apply for. If we use AI to give you the information you're requesting, don't hold it against us. That's what we're doing for our efficiency. But we've done the homework and the research to make sure that we know why we're applying to you. And I think that's kind of where we have to head together to not penalize people for using AI and to tamp down and create a new norm that using AI to spray proposals all over the place is really frowned upon. So that's kind of where I'm trying to lead the conversation a little bit to explore.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in a second?
Yeah, please.
I was just reading what Kara put in the chat and listening to you, Philip, and I think that's it's really important when we're thinking about capacity. Like that's what I use AI for, part of it to actually just plan out my week and make sure that like my priorities are correct as a fundraiser and, helping me line up like what's revenue generating, what's just ops, what's admin, right? And making sure that I'm working efficiently. And then also um it does help me generate a little bit of those kinds of emails and things, but continued editing and making sure that there's still like multiple human eyes on that. And I think there it is interesting to think about it as like it can augment capacity and we still have to continue to use it responsibly. And I also think that you know, it's a tool that's going to be around and like for better or worse, we've got to jump on and learn how to use it. Um, and use it in a way that somewhere still aligns with our values.
Definitely.
All right.
Rebecca, did you want to talk more about your comment that you put in the chat or?
I think, yeah, I do think the answer is probably it depends. And also like, I don't know, I'm never the grant writer that just like never like does like, it's not a ton of churn. I'm always like in dialogue for the most part when people are getting an application. But I do wonder because I'm like, there's always like the pressure. I do feel like some funders might appreciate efficiency and like especially like there's sometimes you have to make a really strong case for funding the human beings who actually do the work and not just the work itself. So I guess I wondered if it was uniformly true that if they
No, I don't
suspect
think
you're
so.
doing AI, they're like, okay, yeah.
One,
Well, it'd be really,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say it'd be really interesting if you turned it around to funders and said, hey, we're fine to not use AI, but we don't want you to ever use AI to do any sort of your evaluation either. Let's see how many of them are like, huh, well, when you put it that way, because I
Or
guarantee
we
you,
want you funding, 100% of our fundraising costs.
Right.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
exactly, exactly. So, I don't think it's everybody's reacting because this is happening so fast to all of us. So, if they suddenly see a 300% increase year over year in applications in the door, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we have to deal with this." And so they're trying and they're kind of grabbing for, kind of blunt policies to say no AI or tell us you're using AI just to slow the fire hose. And so I think it's very solvable and we can actually get to a better place, but we can't have both sides hiding that they're using AI and then kind of trying to like imply that, hey, you know, just let's get it out in the open and talk about how to get to the right place.
Absolutely.
I have personally waded through a couple of RFPs recently that I'm pretty sure were generated primarily by AI and not thoroughly reviewed. So I'm with you, Philip. I'm always thinking like, well, are you using any AI if we're not supposed to use any AI?
Yeah, we're all more similar than we think. Yeah.
I think that leads into another topic that came up. I mean, realistically, I think in a lot of organizations, people are using AI like I think Rebecca or maybe Sarah said like it's kind of a reality now that we have to sort of learn to embrace. Um, if staff have all been using, if your team's all been using AI on their own in different ways with no shared guidelines, and now you're thinking we need to put some policies in place, we need to put some guidelines in place. What what would be the first step to make that happen? And how do you do that without making people feel like they're in trouble? And
Um, Philip,
yeah.
would you like to start?
I do. So I have been talking to people about AI policies now for 3 years. And given what I'm seeing day to day in what AI is capable of as we're building Grantable and how I'm monitoring kind of the state of the art from the Valley and from China, it's like I'm at a point where I'm kind of like, all right, if you need an AI policy, it should be like you should measure the timeline in weeks, not months. Because like back to the earlier topic that we had, this is the sector that is the most moral and most values driven and needs to be shaping AI rollout across society. And if we're still 3 years in talking about how do we talking about the policy, it's kind of one of those things where I want to be maybe a little contrarian here, but kind of giving people a little more permission to go. And one of the things that I'm highlighting is it is not a thing that you are going to check off and finish. The speed that the technology is changing and the way in which the technology is changing is so fast that at Grantable, I will have what I think is in like a really efficient workflow 1 week. And by the next week, because of something that's been released, the whole process I created last week is no longer relevant. And so adapting to that reality is to say, as a team, I would say we would want safety non-negotiables, like data safety, that kind of stuff. But then I think we have to shift our mindset to more of a continuous learning. What do we as a team want to be able to achieve? And what do we want to learn? And then just being comfortable with that. And then having a regular cadence. You're never going to learn everything, but you shouldn't expect that this is something you're going to just learn once, master, and then that's a checkpoint. It's
Right.
it's really much more of like surfing and like riding this wave and staying adaptable. And the last thing I'll say that I came up with in preparing for this session, I think one of the best ways to do it is kind of a science fair model. And so, just very simply, I kind of think that give everybody a budget so that they can pay the $20 or whatever it is for a paid chat so that it's not free and that you're taking care of just a basic data safety layer there so that it's not used for training or used for product improvement, and then come up with your basic what kind of information are we just not going to play with, what kind of workflows are we not going to play with, and then turn it into a bit of a fun project where look around the office, look around the team for things that annoy people, for frictions, and then give people the space to learn these tools, point them towards YouTube, point them towards the stuff where they can figure out what's available to them, and then give people some time to actually come up with little apps or little efficiencies or things to solve your problems, and then have a science fair and like present that to each other, work in the open, ask each other for help. And I think that's actually probably the best way to stay on top of things, make so that people don't feel like they have to hide their AI use. And actually, you can level up your team because somebody's going to come up with something where everybody's like, whoa, that's amazing. Like, let's add that, let's adopt that. So those are my perspectives on AI policies now. Like I just think people have been overwhelmed and then they create them and then they're out of date. And so to me it's got to be a little more flexible and it's got to be a little faster to keep pace with what the reality of the technology is.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything major to add in terms of what should be in your policy, but I do agree it's hard to, we like things to be very cut and dried and risk-free in the nonprofit sector, and that's just not where this world is taking us. So we need to be able to think a little bit more flexibly, which means it's probably not a policy, but a process of continuous like investigation that you need with some like guardrails that you put in place as things evolve. So but I think the how you roll that out is really, I like the way that Philip described it as making it kind of like a group agreement activity, that everybody gets input and then everybody can agree on the policy because we're all in agreement on why it exists and what it's trying to do. Like, I mean, I know it's not going to be a super fun conversation, but it makes it more fun, right? If you're co-creating some guidelines than if you're like writing a policy.
You know what this reminds me of? Like, did we learn nothing from the social media policies that every HR department rolled out and then had to scrap? Like, I mean, it's no different than saying like, well, you're not representing the organization and yelling it out at a bar, so why would you do it on? I find I was part of a team that like just froze at their at their AI policy and have yet to roll one out, and my argument kept being like, it's really not that different from every one of our regular policies on communication. Like, it's a tool, times will change, but if your communication policies are really solid, like, we're never going to be okay with information sharing. We're never going to be okay with lack of privacy. We're never going to be okay with some of these things. So that's automatically part of your AI policy. And to today, we have
Oh, you're
yet to
getting
roll it out.
from
We have yet to roll it out, but it's like, I mean, I've worked closely with HR and I cannot tell you how many like social media policies are being scrapped. And then, you have the Staples baddie who did amazing for her brand because they weren't stopping her. They were working with her. So
Mm.
it just sounds like everything we've already seen.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, that I feel like I don't know, people make it scarier than it needs to be. Like if it has AI in front of it, like there's some just losing your mind over it.
Yeah, if you remove
Um,
the word AI, like how would you make this policy?
right. No, I think that's a great point. I do want to check in. I want to make sure that we're getting to everybody's questions if you had submitted them ahead of time. Is there anybody on the call right now that submitted a question that we have not answered yet? And if so, come off mute and just tell us your question. Okay. In that case, I think that um, Philip, you touched on something that I would love to hear a little bit more about. You talked about, you said go for the paid tier so that you can have some basic data privacy protections. If an org is really, really new to AI and they're feeling worried about data privacy, about client stories, about client data, what would be your like short rundown on what they need to know about that to start using AI, but to do it safely?
Yeah, so great question. It actually builds very much on the like not that much has changed fundamentally point that we were just on. Um, the basic layer you can do, and why I encourage people to just consider the $20 or whatever it is as sort of professional development, is because if it is a free plan, the terms of service literally say we can use the information you put in here for training and whatever purposes we want. If it's free, you're the product. We know this from, once again, social media, right? So if you pay, it flips those terms, and it's just that's a basic way that you can take care of the that issue, the legality. But the thing that I think people are worried about is not generally a thing that's happening very much, which is the fear is I think it's based on people's understanding of how traditional software works, where like they think that if they're putting information into an AI chatbot, that it's going into some database where it might get served up to somebody else, which is not how AI works. And so if your information pops out of somebody else's AI, that's because it was in the training data. And if it's in the training data, it's probably because it's viewable online and it got scraped months ago when the company was creating the model. So if there's like a vector to be careful about, it's things that are viewable online, that are scrapable online. So you still want to take care. You don't want to be, really, really too casual with important information. But again, I think it's the same things that apply as pre-AI. So where would you put sensitive data or client information before there was AI? So, if you're comfortable with Google Drive, then, if you put it into Google Gemini, it's the same servers, it's the same security, it's the same machines that are handling your data when you put it into Google Sheets versus if you put it into Gemini. Sheets now has Gemini. So if you were to be in Sheets and say, I'm safe, and then you type into a little box to the side and say, hey, help me do, calculate this cell, it's now used AI. The whole sheet has gone into AI and has been processed, and it's safe enough for Google to put it out there. So my message to folks like in this room, I don't want people to feel like they have to become cybersecurity experts to use AI. If you're using an open AI model, or if you're using Claude, or if you're using Google AI, like you're using the world's best secured platforms, because these are massive companies that are taking care to make sure that your stuff isn't getting shared out or whatever. If you're paying, that means that your stuff is not going into training sets, and they may not even want to use that stuff for training in the first place. The place where a lot of stuff gets ingested is from online and from scraping, but you would still need massive quantities of your stuff online in order for it to show up in a training model to be able to replicate it. So it's just a different way of thinking about security and where you're vulnerable. It didn't used to be that we cared if a blog post was viewable online because people weren't able to steal it or replicate it from that way. But now that's where the threat is. And it's not, I would say, so much what you're putting into the chat box. There's a caveat that I would say: if you start to use agentic software that can send things or publish things on your behalf, then you could inadvertently broadcast information out of your email inbox or out of a post, which is a little bit of a different scenario. But hopefully that makes sense, and I'm happy to, go into more detail for any of those things.
No, I think that makes sense. This is exactly why we were so excited to have you, Philip, because you can answer a question like that in a way that I feel confident saying nobody on the SparkPoint team could do. So,
Absolutely.
um, and I feel like I just learned a lot also.
Me too. Thank you.
Okay. Um, as we're kind of winding down, I think we have time for a couple more questions. If anything comes up for people, for sure throw those in the Q&A, or come off mute. But if somebody on the call wants to take kind of all the information that they've learned today and start investing in tools, I mean, we had kind of the science fair model that you talked about, which I definitely want to have a SparkPoint science fair. I'm
Oh my
obsessed with
gosh,
this
so
idea.
fun.
But if you're looking, like if you're a small team, if you're looking at kind of assessing and investing in some AI tools, what are some of the questions that organizations should ask when they're looking at all of these different like general AI tools, fundraising specific, grant writing specific? I would love to hear Whitney and Philip, both of your thoughts on that.
I'll give Philip a break and jump in first this time.
You can get a glass of
Um,
water.
I think for me, it's the thing I said before, is grounding your strategy and your workflows around the fact that fundraising is about relationships, and that you cannot get around that, nor should you be trying. That's not the point. The point is to build relationships that engage people, that get them more invested over time. There are lots of ways and lots of tools that AI can, there's lots of ways that AI can help, and there's lots of tools that exist to leverage. I think what's important to keep in mind is that your strategy is driven by how you're connecting with supporters and investors and funders. It's not driven by the tools that are available to do the work. So you need to understand your strategy before you insert tools into the process. And I think if you have a strong and clear strategy, then it becomes much easier to see where the likelihood of support from AI is going to be most effective. And one of the easy places is in automating repetitive tasks that are always the same. So there's a lot of that in fundraising. The other thing that I think is of huge value in terms of AI is leveraging it to clean up databases, to improve your spreadsheets, to make your spreadsheets more efficient and effective than they currently are, to review all your lists, all those things that take so much time and frankly are probably better done by a machine. AI should be doing them. But you have to know what those needs are before you can slot the solutions in. But I would say Philip probably knows even more about the solutions than I do. Much more.
My cheeky answer here is going to be YouTube. I would say, building on Whitney's strategic advice, once you definitely start there, like be be deeply, deeply knowledgeable about the problem that you want to solve. And then I think figuring out, sending some people off, spending some time to look at what people are publishing on YouTube as far as tutorials and how to use these different tools, is just quite frankly, it's amazing. I mean, as soon as these labs release something new, it seems like, I mean, literally within hours, there are people out there whose whole, career is to create these really nice step-by-step tutorials and explainers. And I think right now what I'm seeing is it's very much for the tech audience. Like there, if you were to look at their subscribers, it's probably people that are, kind of tinkerers and hackers and in the tech sector. But the videos themselves are really accessible. They're visual, step by step, great. These people are very, very good at teaching. And so there's nothing that says, your teams can't go and benefit from the same material and to share it around and to talk about that stuff, to grab the transcript and talk about it with your favorite AI. But I think that's a really underutilized or under explored resource for learning how to what AIs are capable of, especially for different problems or workflows that you've identified within the company. So that's kind of like my what tech do small teams get started with, is YouTube.
Hmm.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, if there are no last burning questions, I think we can start wrapping it up. Um, I would just open it up, Philip and Whitney, but also the floor is open to anybody who is on the call. If you just have any closing thoughts, anything that we want to leave people with, and this doesn't even have to be about AI, because again, the idea behind these group therapy for fundraiser talks is like we're all in this together, and it's kind of tough right now. So in that vein, if anybody has anything they want to share.
D.
I just want to say, if you're using AI for grants or for whatever, hallucinations are real. They still exist. You have to question the information that you're getting. The obsequious nature of the way that AI works is that it's always trying to please you. And so, because it wants you to keep using it, right? So it wants you to stay on as long as possible, just like all the social media platforms, right? So it's going to keep on giving you more when you say anything. That one of the things that you can do is to give it instructions about how you prefer your answers to come out. Like, I do not want you to write the email for me. I want you to tell me who I should contact and how often and whatever, right? You ask it something that's formulaic, but you tell it in advance that the kinds of information that you want. I actually did some research for an organization's timeline, and I was trying to find out if there was any information pre-90s, so pre-internet, about the time period this organization had where it didn't have much history, and it made up things with names that were not real.
Wow.
And I looked for it and couldn't find anything. And then I finally asked it, where did you get that information? Who is this person? That other person is a real person, but they didn't write anything back then because they were 4 years old, right? And so then it went, oh, yes. And it started apologizing to me about the shit that it made up. So this was about a year ago to a year and a half ago. So I just want to say, interrogate the information that you receive. Don't accept it as truth. And it doesn't happen all the time. You don't know when it's going to happen. That's some of my experience anyway.
One other, I would add
Hmm.
to that, D, just if you're curious, if you want to kind of use the scientific method with AI, you ask the same questions to multiple different types, right? Multiple platforms and see where the combination, where the like overlap is, because that's where your like best answers probably are. So that's one way to kind of test what you're getting is to ask the same question of multiple different platforms as a way of, quality controlling your answers and understanding how it works too, I think is really helpful.
If I can add a little bit of color there too. So the problem is very real. The problem has gotten a lot better. And the way that companies are addressing that is by actually creating lots of different AIs that then serve different specific roles. So for that scenario, like in our software, if you were to do research, there would be different AIs that are processing your request, coming up with a plan, then different ones that are going out and doing the research, and then oppositionally, a different AI checking the research to see, is it real? Is it a real link? Did you create any fake people? Are they blah, blah, blah? And then showing the link and allowing you to like click on that and see it. So I wouldn't say that it's not possible because hallucinations, or I mean, it's not even a hallucination. It's kind of not like a great way to, it hasn't malfunctioned is was one of the things that I want to really clarify for people. It's just predicted the wrong thing, but it's actually not making a mistake, quote unquote. But now the way that people have really cut down on the amount of like what we call hallucination is by having teams of AIs check each other on their way to delivering you the product. So it takes a little bit longer, but you can actually get really good and verifiable results these days. So I think that problem is still something to be aware of, but you should be experiencing less of it if you're using a really well-designed tool. And then a parting thought or a parting technique. I saw in the poll, I think a lot of people wanted like a prompt library. And I actually, the advice that I give people is instead of thinking about, oh, I have to remember or store all of these really great prompts, I actually think if you just remember one thing, which is to ask more questions of AI, it's actually a really powerful way to invert and have the AI do more work. So instead of trying to remember how to create the very best possible letter of interest or letter of intent. And oh, where's my prompt for creating that? Ask the AI, hey, what's your process for creating an LOI for this particular audience or funder or recipient? Let it show its plan, and then you critique its plan and have it follow its own plan. Or say, ask me 10 increasingly nuanced questions about this project that I want to work on with you. And then just give it lots and lots of context, and then say at the end of that, present a work plan for me. So turning it into more about questions rather than directives, I think is a huge way to offload a lot of the mental work, and at the same time get more of your context and judgment and discernment out of your head and into the AI. So instead of trying to remember perfect prompts, just try to get into a more curious mindset to ask the AI how it would go about achieving a directive or an objective that you have, and then also turning the AI into an interviewer, and you are the subject matter expert, that it's pulling your context and expertise out of you and using that to do the work.
Perfect.
Yeah, one of the best recommendations I saw one time was that, like, when you think you have the product, right? Like, you've talked to AI, you've added questions, you said, no, I like this better. Why can't you do it this way? Here's a thing, right? But you think you've got the end product. It's a grant or whatever, right? It's a grant proposal. One of the things that you can ask it is, what would a critic of this say about this position, right? So then now make it a critic of itself and you, and ask it, what are the weak points here? Or where is there going to be some pushback on this position? So yeah.
Amazing.
I
Well,
just want to quickly say thank you to everyone. That's it. My parting words are thank you. It was great to see you all. And thank you so much, Philip, for joining us.
My
absolutely.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we hope to talk more with all of you. Thank you for being here, and we will send the recording out soon so that you have this as a resource. Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.